Hello, fellow crime fighters. Morgan Wright, CEO and founder of the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases. Just some quick insight onto the name. And then I want to dispel some misconceptions because I got a couple questions from one of my buddies out there, a cold case detective. Had some actually lawyers asking, never get the lawyers involved, had lawyers asking about this. So I want to do a couple things. So let me tell you where the name came from and what its importance is. And then we'll talk about what Holmes is and what it isn't. So, first of all, the name. Probably could have come up with some fancy names, but I did it for two reasons. Number one, it's psychological. People want the same but different. If you've noticed things like when you do a startup or you're building a new product, hey, it's like this, but just a little different, right? So, if I'd come out with a totally different thing, my goal has always been for this is to be able to get federal funding the way the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children gets funding. There's the first clue. What is it that is the same but different? So let's look at the name National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases. Sounds pretty much the same, just a little different, right? Just one syllable off. So when you say we're like NCMEC, right? So we're like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, but we're the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases. So part of this is to get them to understand we're not building anything new. I'll tell you where this actually came from. I actually wrote the it's a 140-page document if anybody ever gets bored and you want to see what it is. It's the strategy for on how to share information between 18,000 federal, tribal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. And the original program was called the Law Enforcement Information Sharing Architecture. And I'm going, dudes, that's a snoozer. I mean, I told this to some pretty high ranking people in DOJ. I was the project manager for this. I was the lead person on this. I had to bring in all of the different agencies, FBI, ATF, DEA, U.S. Marshals, Bureau of Prisons, U.S. Attorney's Office, you name it. We're getting people around the table. And I'm saying, people, this is a snoozer. Nobody cares about it. You're not going to get a cop excited about an architecture. So what did they just release about the same time? What they released was the National Criminal Intelligence Sharing Program. I said, just change one word. Change it from the Law Enforcement Information Sharing Architecture to the Law Enforcement Information Sharing Program. Now it looks like you got a strategy for sharing intelligence and information. Who knew? It was just that simple. So a lot of times people want to get too clever by half. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is keep it very simple to say the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases. So why do we call it the National Center? Could have called it the International Center. Six one, half dozen of the other. The internet has no concept of distance, so pretty soon we'll expand it. When we do, there'll be a section of the site that will be the International Center. But for now, it's the National Center. Why? Because we have to own our backyard first. So why do I call it Open and Unsolved Cases? So when you're in law enforcement and you close or you have a criminal case that you've opened, there's several ways that that case is closed out, right? One of them is closed by arrest. You make an arrest, you find the perpetrator, you put the habeas corpus on them, put handcuffs on them, they go to jail. But that's not always the case. The case may not always be closed that way. What happens is you may have to reopen it because you may have gotten the wrong person. Maybe DNA now points you to somebody else. Don't don't get excited here. Some of you people seeking to sue. You can arrest people based on probable cause. As long as you have probable cause, you can make an arrest. It takes reasonable suspicion to detain somebody, but you need probable cause to arrest, to get an arrest warrant, to get probable cause to search, get a search warrant. Now, the standard of proof for convicting somebody is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Just because you have probable cause does not mean that you have proof beyond a reasonable doubt. If you are convicted in a court and it's proof beyond a reasonable doubt, you can infer from that that you had probable cause to make the arrest and start the case. But sometimes so the person gets let go, and what do? The case is still open, right? It was closed by arrest, but now you open it because that's not your suspect. It could be what they call closed by exception. Exception meaning, and this actually happened to one of my cases. I had a homicide case where a boyfriend got jealous of well, I shouldn't say the ex-husband got jealous of the ex-wife with her current boyfriend. He drove by, shot at him. Actually, me and another guy had to take the body 6 hours away to a forensic pathologist who specialized in this, but it went through the skull, hit what's called the petrous bone, which is the strongest bone in the human body. And but he shot him. The guy got shot. He bent over. He got shot through the head. Wounded the girlfriend or the ex-wife. We had a solid case. There's no doubt he did it. but he fled. He went to Mexico. We had a tough time finding him. 20 years later, I go back to visit my peeps. I'm talking to some of the new detectives. They were able to get with the FBI. The FBI found this guy, and through processes of death certificates and interviewing family, they determined, yep, that's your dude. He's in the ground. He's dead. There is no extraditing a dead body back to face trial. So the case was closed by exception. Death of offender. You could have a case closed because of death of the victim. There's no more case. You have nobody to testify. There could be a variety of reasons, right? And then the other thing too, it could be unfounded. You might get a report said, hey, I thought I saw this. This actually happened we had a case one time, somebody called in, swore that they had seen somebody discard a stillborn baby into the trash. And if you ever want to know what it's like to dig through tons of trash in Kansas when it's hot, I can tell you. So, but that case, we ended up finally after we were able to narrow things down. Great teamwork. We were able to narrow things down, find out, okay, when the trash came in, where did it go? We were able to actually identify the area that all the trash from the town went to. We got a lot of volunteers came out. A lot of people came out, volunteered, great people. Um, and so we're digging through this stuff. But after all this time, no baby. We unfounded the case. Probably the person was legitimate. They thought that's what they saw, and of course, when you say it's stillborn baby, our concern is, was it stillborn or was it murder? Was it a homicide, or was it accidental death, or was it natural death? Yeah, so we have all these questions we can't answer. So that case was unfounded, and so there's a variety of things. So one of the things we look at is a case can be open and solved. In other words, case is still open. Perpetrator is a fugitive from justice. We haven't found the fugitive. Or it could be for a while, maybe the victim doesn't want to testify. There's all sorts of things, but the case could be solved. In other words, it's a whodunit. We know who done it. We have an arrest warrant. We just don't have them in custody. So that case could still be open. It could be solved, but it could be open. It could be open and unsolved, which means we got a murder. Who done it? We don't know who done it. So it's unsolved at that point. So it's open and unsolved. There's no sense in putting cases that are closed and solved into the system because there's nothing to do, right? So it's open and unsolved cases. So you can have a case that's open and solved, but now you need to find the fugitive, the person, or open and unsolved. So that's why we call it. It's not open or unsolved. It's open and unsolved. So I mean, it could be both. So don't get into semantics with me. But that's the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases. So that's what we want to do is focus on those things where. Or it could be the other thing too. It could be a missing person, right? Missing person is an open and unsolved case, right? It's open, it's unsolved because we haven't located that missing person. Maybe we locate that missing person and they've died somewhere. Maybe it's an accidental death, maybe it's a natural death, or it's what we've seen happen before with some of the elderly. Somebody might have dementia, wander off, and we find their body days later. A lot of different ways you could look at this. You might have somebody who's identified. You have an open and unsolved case because we have recovered an unidentified body. And so we're trying to figure out who is this. So that case would remain open and unsolved. In fact, you never want to tell a family that, sorry, your case is closed. We don't know who did it, but the case is closed. No, you never close a case. In fact, you want to know who never closes a case? Ask the U.S. Marshals. They're still looking for the people who escaped from Alcatraz. They're still looking for D.B. Cooper. They're pit bulls, man. If I do something wrong, I do not want the U.S. Marshals coming after me because they've got a swim lane. It's narrower than the FBI, and other folks. But what they do well. And so if they put their resources and they come after you, chances are they're going to find you. So, but that's kind of the way we look at it. So you've got missing people, you've got unidentified people, you've got open cases that are solved, but we don't have the suspect in custody. We have open cases that are solved or unsolved because we don't know who the suspect is, or we haven't acquired the evidence yet. So here's an example. You could have an open and unsolved case. We have a pretty good idea. You did it. Whoever you are out there, you know who you are. You might have done it. But we just don't have the evidence yet. So the case is still open and unsolved. Your tips may lead to finding that piece of information, finding the weapon who did it, finding a DNA sample, something that might help solve this case. Once the case is solved, now you could go all the way through trial and get up to trial and have the person found not guilty. Point of fact, they are not found innocent. They are found not guilty because you did not establish proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That doesn't mean the case is open. That doesn't mean that they are not the ones who did it. Sometimes that's the case, But a lot of times, what it is that you just couldn't overcome that hurdle of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Take a look at the Sean Combs, the Diddy trial, right? He was found guilty of some stuff, was found not guilty of other stuff. Does that mean he didn't do it? No, it just meant that they couldn't reach the threshold of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. They had enough probable cause. In fact, they went to a grand jury. They indicted him. I get it. You can indict a ham sandwich at a grand jury, but they got him indicted. But still, we have these levels of proof. So that's what that is, right? So that's why it's called the National Center for Open and Unsolved Cases. So many ways we can go with this, but that's the beauty of the system. Once you put the case in there, we help you. Our goal is to help you close that case. We're not about closure is a myth. It's a fiction. We do not give families closure. There's no way you can make a family feel the same way the day before the homicide. Uh, you know, 10 days after the homicide, you can't make them feel the same way they did a day before by finding the person and arresting him. You might get resolution on the case. You might get what your sense of justice on the case, but the closure is a myth. It's a fiction. Let's talk about the other thing about what Holmes is and what it is not. Got this question through again. This buddy of mine was talking with one of the a deputy Commonwealth attorney at an unnamed. I will not name the county, but they were kind of saying, "Well, we need to know. We've got to. What about if we need to exculpatory evidence? We got to do due diligence." Hey, folks, whoa, slow time out. First of all, I wrote 140 pages to address exactly this inside the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice is the world's largest law firm. Had to go through privacy impact assessments, and then guess what? I thought it was a brilliant stroke. We came up with this strategy. We went to the ACLU, and one of the people later, one of the FBI folks, briefed him on it. He went and talked to the ACLU, and you know what they said? We don't think you're collecting enough information. You want to talk about being shocked? You could have knocked us over with a feather. We were so shocked. Okay, we get it, right? So I've been through this route before. So the way this is designed, first of all, we are not a system of record. We're not a major information system. We're not a system of record. Why? Because we are not a government entity. We do not fall under the criminal justice information system rules, the CJIS rules. So we don't hold any criminal justice information. If you can't put it into a press release, if you can't put it into a Facebook post or an X post, or put it on LinkedIn, or put it on Snapchat, or put it on TikTok, whatever it is you want to do, if you can't put it in there, we can't use it. Why? Because you can't make a connection on information nobody knows about. You can only make a connection based on things that are known, which is I have a location that's known. Pretty soon, we're going to be able to get into doing things like it's the fugitive case I talked about yesterday, where she was a phlebotomist. Well, what if we start identifying? People start saying, "Hey, what's your occupation?" Well, I'm a phlebotomist. When we have somebody who's a phlebotomist, you might get a ping to say, "You may be connected to this case because you and the suspect who killed her boyfriend, dismembered him, left parts of his body on I-75 in Ohio." Right? We'd like to find this person, but you may be connected because you're both phlebotomists. So there's ways that we can do that, but that is not criminal justice information. So we are not holding intelligence. We're not holding sensitive CJI, what they call it. We don't. So you can't do a FOIA on Open Unsolved. You can't come to us with the FOIA because we're not a government agency. We are a nonprofit, a private nonprofit. We're here to help the police. We're here to help the public, but we are a nonprofit. It is not a government. You can fund You can fund private systems with government grants, which is what we do. But we are not run by DOJ. We are not run by the cops office. We are run as a nonprofit by me and our team. Got some great people coming on board. We're going to tell you about that during the demo. So remember, openunsolved.org. We got a demonstration July 30th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And especially if you're law enforcement out there, hop on this because we're starting to get a lot of interest right now around Virginia, but I've had agencies from California, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Indiana already start hearing about this and showing up. So make sure you go here. But I want to just make it clear, if you're an attorney out there and you're listening in, we are not a system of record. We are not a major information system. Couple of buzzwords, but very key things because we are not required to comply with federal government rules on handling of criminal justice information. So we can collect whatever we want. Why do you think Google can collect whatever they want, and Amazon and Apple? And then there goes my cat. No respect. So why can they collect all that? And you know what? A lot of times government buys that information. I know a friend of mine runs a company runs ad tech. It's called Fog Data, and does a lot of stuff with information that comes from collecting information from mobile devices. So LexisNexis, they collect all sorts of information. They're not a government system. The government buys information from them. So There you go. So we are not a system of record. We're not federals. You can't use us that way. We're not subject to the Freedom of Information Act. Now, if you want to try and serve a subpoena on us, we're going to fight it tooth and nail. Why? Because we're here to protect the privacy and integrity of the tips that are received. And by the way, when the tips come in, we don't keep the tips. The tips automatically go to the agency or the entity that put that case in there. So if you put the case in there and you are listed as the case agent and you can put up to 10, emails of people should get this information, you don't follow up, that's not on us. That's on you as the law enforcement agency. We are not, we are simply a delivery mechanism. When the information comes in, it goes to you just as fast as it comes in. Why? Because that's the whole purpose, designed to give you tips and information so that you can solve the cases. We're not here to send people into the field and do your work for you. We're here to help you do your work faster, quicker, faster, better. We'll get into some examples. I'll tell you more about some cases like Richard Allen Davis. We'll talk about the DC sniper. We'll talk about some other stuff I was involved with, working with the FBI and some stuff. And it's like, folks, I'm telling you, it's all about the data. You can't connect the dots unless you collect the dots. So openunsolved.org, register for our demo coming up July 30th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern time. And then guess what? If you are so inclined and you're a law enforcement person, especially, and you want to be part of our beta test group, we're running our beta test on August 1st from 12 to 2 p.m. Eastern time. That's where you get an account, you get early access to this. We're going to walk through stuff, make sure it functions like it needs to be. I've got enough citizens already, so sorry about that, folks, but definitely would like a few more law enforcement folks. So go here, openunsolved.org. Appreciate you guys. Share the message, please, because this is a game changer. There is no system like this in the United States right now. In fact, I don't think there's a system like this in the world for the public to do this. We're going to make history. We're going to change things. But the thing we're going to do is we're going to impact, we're going to make communities safer. We're going to solve crimes. We're going to bring fugitives to justice. We're going to find the missing. We're going to give names to the unidentified. And we're going to make your families, your communities safer. So till next time, openunsolved.org. Register for our demo. I'll see you on the next one.